because that shit really pisses me off.
I'd hit the panic button. I'd hit the trigger button.
Don't feel like you should be there. Walk away. Then you've got to analyse the fish. This is the biggest one. That to me there is all your red flags. Bullshit alert. Well, that sounds a bit less harsh.
No one wants to show their card.
This is a company that cares. This is a company that gives a shit.
This is something worthwhile.
No, I'm sorry. It's just a ticking time bomb.
And he just sort of looked at me and said, to be an expert, you only need to know. Right, welcome folks to another podcast session, Koi Talk Studio with myself, Chris Wall, and Ricky Stoddart. How you doing, Ricky?
I'm good, mate. How are you?
Top of the world, mate. Yeah, top of the world. So, we're going to get stuck into a bit of a, not a contentious subject, but certainly something that throws up quite a lot of opinion. Shall we put it that way? I can see you sort of biting your lip already.
I'm just wondering what's coming and who I'm going to upset today. So
it's not like you.
No, it's you provoking me all the time, mate. I swear you get a kick from it.
Never poke the bear, mate. Yeah, I just sort of prod you and then sit back and eat the popcorn. So
I'll behave.
Yeah. So, but it's a subject that's important to everyone in this industry, and probably an area that, having been on the retail side of the industry, we see, and this isn't coming from a position of, you're doing it wrong as such, but where are people falling down in terms of getting the right information, selecting the right product range? Essentially, how do you select a dealer? And more importantly, what constitutes being a good koi dealer? Right, I'll sit back.
I'm off. No. Well, anyway, it'll just come out. Let's see where we go with this. It's a good one, mate. I think that's true because we have the old saying, don't we? Find a good dealer and stick to it. That's been around in the koi job for as long as I've sort of been in it, really. I don't know if koi dealers actually came up with that saying. It certainly makes sense.
Yeah, you're not going to stick with a bad one, I guess, are you?
No. But you are right. What the hell does make a good dealer? I mean, wow, this is so multi-layered. I'm going to have to bear wheels on this one. But I think first and foremost, it's going to be very subjective. From one element, it's going to really depend on what level you are at in the hobby as well, because what's good to someone starting out is possibly different to someone who's been in it for 10 years. I think this applies more importantly to newcomers, because these are the guys that are really, really, I class as the most important in the hobby. The reason Koi Talk started was for people like that in their earlier years as a hobbyist, not the ones who were already, successful koi keepers, the newbies, because there's this whole minefield of stuff out there you need to navigate to, eventually land with the right people or become a successful koi keeper. And a dealer plays a really, really pivotal part in all that. But when you don't know anything, how do you figure out if the person you're going to is going to lead you up the right path? Not just empty your pockets, which unfortunately there's probably too much of that out there, not just in koi, in any business.
Yeah, any industry, yeah.
It's a tough one because for us sat here, it's quite easy to fathom out, isn't it? But we kind of know what's out there.
I think the problem is everyone seems to learn the hard way, don't they?
Unfortunately, yeah.
That's a bit of a saying in many walks of life, but certainly when it comes to this industry, you don't hear sort of when it goes wrong for people, it kind of has a habit of going like disastrously wrong. And then, like you say, that new blood coming into the hobby can soon sort of become dissatisfied with the industry or the hobby and go, well, this isn't for me.
Yeah.
And then all that work prior to that, engaging people, people getting into the hobby, trying to build the industry, it lands flat on its face if people are packing up within 12, 18 months.
Yeah. I think the part with this and why it's tricky is it comes down to people being able to assess people, because ultimately a lot of koi dealers are people. When you're in this, koi dealers are quite often husband and wife, one-man bands, however you want to call it. So that lead person in the companies is so important, but you've got to be able to make some assessments yourself based on what you see, based on the person you communicate with, how they respond to you. There's a lot around it. In the 21st century, it's a lot easier with, I say online reviews, just as I've actually had that thought, I realise there's not really anywhere for so many other industries. There are reviews, sort of check a trade and things like that. I think that's an industry that's needed that for a long time. But yeah, nothing really like that for koi dealers, so to speak. It relies a lot on word of mouth and people making their own opinions, and I very rarely find myself in this situation. I'm the sort of person, I'm very, very analytical. I don't get into many new things because I like to be exceptionally good at everything I do. Hence why I don't really ever start much, because it's just too much hassle for me. When I'm not an absolute legend at it after a week, I get pissed off.
But you're still playing football.
Oh, says the man that keeps making excuses every time a game of five-a-side comes up.
I don't want to show you up, mate.
That's shocking. Yeah, that's your go-to, that one. Or the fact of, won't get injured.
Or that as well, yeah.
Oh, mate, that was low.
Could let that one go, mate.
That was low.
Especially after all the shit you get, mate. Jesus. You got to let me have one every now and again.
Shocking. Anyway, moving on from that one. Yeah, so I mean, the first thing I'll do is let's say analyze the people. You look around, don't you? I think that's natural to look around and see what's going on. The only example I can give you sort of outside of koi is, as you know, and your ears know, I'm quite into audio equipment, especially car audio. And yeah, I mean, that's a world for me. I know diddly squat about it, you know, when it comes to it, but I know what I like in regards to sound and what I want to achieve, what budget I've got to spend. And when it came for me venturing into that world, right, you start looking around. So you do the usual Google searches and see who comes up. But then you've just got all this vast amount of information that you need to process through. And yeah, in doing so, I often analyze things in such a way of I look for the people who care. And for me, that's about small details. It can be in presentation and things like that, because that shows a deeper level of giving a shit, really. So often, yeah, the first page of Google can be useful because instantly there you've got people who I know in my analytical mind are putting an effort into being found. You don't just end up on the first page of Google by chance. So, you know, looking through there, and then, you know, you can localize your search if that's important for you, if you're not wanting to go too far afield. But yeah, throughout all this, I had one that landed on me, and it did actually end up being local, but that wasn't through chance. And some guys, you know, out in Sheffield, and thought, yeah, this seems like a place. As you look into it, sort of bit of social media stuff, you see all the other people around them, and the big thing for me is I saw the accolades. You know, these guys just seemed into it. I see demo cars. They're clearly investing money that they've earned in demo cars for taking to shows. When they've gone to shows, they've got a whole list of clients who have won awards and prizes and top prizes. You know, so you think, right, that all seems good. Go and pay him a visit. Go and pay him a visit. Speak to the main man, who's still there to this day. And he was just phenomenal. I mean, talk about, I could feel the passion was oozing out of him for what he did. Technical knowledge galore, but if you wanted him to dumb it down, he'd dumb it down, no issues. Then you get on to the point of, you know, so careful around budget as well. It's not just straight in with, you want this one. You know, every product that they believed in and stocked was in that shop. A small range, very, very small shop. I was expecting to go and see like a warehouse type thing. Really small shop with a few select ranges of products that generally fitted different budgets as well. And they were all there to touch, feel, and more importantly, listen to. And it was like, right, turn around, plays a track, and it's got this amazing demo standard set up whereby flicking a button, it changed it to a different speaker. And he's like, you tell me when you hear the one that you like, to my understanding of music. And yeah, sure enough, it happened to be the most expensive one in that instance, but the difference was clear. That wasn't by me looking at the prices. It was played them in a random order. It's that one. There we go, amazing. And then kind of worked it back from there. The guy was just insane. Had endless amounts of time, endless amounts of knowledge, superb knowledge about every product that he'd got, different options there. just amazing. And that experience to me, I could have gone in there and got ripped absolutely blind, and then the aftercare service that came when I'd had my first install done, it was like, I wanted to push it a bit further, and he's like, dude, you haven't got to, It was never in any rush. It was not about taking money, about getting what you wanted. And like I say, I saw this passion and knowledge and technical understanding, and plus it's all there. You're not walking into a shop and someone saying, yeah, I can do that. Here's one of our demo cars, go and sit in it. We spent a load of our hard-earned profits making this, so you can see what we're capable of doing. I'm not just going to tell you what we're capable of, physically see it. And that's a big thing for me that ties back into this with the koi. A lot of people seem to be able to talk the talk. And that is a bit, and when I say even talk the talk, really regurgitate. This is what scares me a lot. Who is this person you go into? You've got to make an analysis straight away. If you've decided from the external stuff, right, that's worth making a visit to this dealer because I like what I see, for example. You go, it's on you then at that point. You've got to assess that person. What's that person like for you? Have they got time for you? Do they talk to you in a condescending manner? Because that shit really pisses me off. Some people's arrogance that they won't, only want to deal with certain clientele or certain level of people. Straight away, if you don't feel comfortable, don't feel like you should be there, walk away. Then you've got to analyse the fish. This is the biggest one, right? Because knowledge will be laid bare. It'll be laid there for all to see, not what comes out of the mouth. I think the surroundings will tell you everything you need to know. That's really where you want to be looking, as you know. So for me, the big thing, like I say, people can talk the talk. Very, very easy to read a book and kind of recycle that information and pass it out. But let's just use the best example I can give you here is probably around what I do in raising fish. How many people do you know could talk the talk about growing fish? A few, I should imagine.
Yeah. To a decent standard, yeah, not too many, yeah.
How many people could watch or have read our magazine, watch these podcasts and proclaim that they know how to do it? Quite easy. You take the core information, you heat it to 25 degrees, you feed a lot, you sake, your kare, fantastic, your fish will grow like stink. The practice and the reality of that and actually truly understanding how to put all them pieces together and make it happen are very different. When I talk about that, and this is the reason why anything I talk about, I've got the evidence sat right behind me at any given point. This is not just chat. This is not just something I've read. The evidence is there for all to see. And that, I believe, is where some of that credibility comes from. So when you then enter into a new shop for the first time, you get somebody, really pushing it hard that they know what they're doing or pushing a particular product. Are they using that product in their shop? Look for some evidence of it. Because this is where I think stuff gets really complicated. You might have a dealer pushing X, Y, and Z product, or a particular food. What food are they actually using? Yeah, this is the stuff you're getting into. What state are their fish actually in? They're telling you how to grow fish, but their own fish are withering away in the tanks. That's a complete contradiction there, What evidence have you got? They're telling you a fish is good for a koi show. You see where I'm going with this?
Yeah.
Where's the evidence that they've ever won a prize at a koi show? All mine's laid bare all over my office, because I'll wear it like a badge of honour. It's trophies, certificates done at the highest level, fish grown to the highest level that I share with everybody on a continual basis. I'm quite fortunate that in a sense, the products, when it comes to that, I think this is a difficult thing. There's so many products out there, and as a dealer needs to make money. They need to sell products. It's very, very hard to stay true to if we stayed true to my beliefs and we translated that into a koi shop spread of dry goods, there'd be about 4 products on a shelf. It would be pretty dismal.
Yeah.
And a lot of people wouldn't respond well to walking into that, but then that's because I won't just sell something I never would, knowing that I didn't believe in it. I mean, this must be, you might shed some light more on that bit because you've been out of it for a while now, but
yeah,
how hard was it?
It was really hard. Retail is a difficult game to be in, and the trouble is you fall into a trap of, well, some people fall into the trap of sort of racing to the bottom and going, I need to be seen to be giving everything away, but that doesn't really build a lot of confidence long term, because a lot of those people that are making that, how many businesses that start out like that are still standing 5 years later?
Not many.
Because the reality is it's not viable. You might get a rush of people through the door, trying to get stuff at a low price, but the reality is long term it's not a great mindset. It doesn't instill much confidence either when your stock disappears and then you haven't got it again for sort of 6 months because you've not made enough money to pay. It's just a cycle. And I think the problem that a lot of hobbyists fall into, particularly the new hobbyists, even more experienced hobbyists, is I've got a problem, I've got a product for that. Less is the amount of times that my advice is just slow down, break things down, simplify things. We've always had a very similar mantra of koi keeping. Keep it simple. Don't overcomplicate things. If you want to go to that nth degree and bring on all that stress, and you've got the time to do it, that's fine. That's up to you. But if you're your average Joe working 9 to 5, got children, etc., but you want to enjoy the hobby, don't cause stress for yourself. But I think the problem is when people do encounter a problem, you need this. So I buy that. It doesn't work. You need this now. And then you end up moving around buying all these products, and it doesn't change anything.
Yeah, it's a minefield because there's such varying levels of knowledge out there as well, which is a huge problem. And like you said, some stores are driven by we need to sell. Any business needs to make money, it needs to make profit to survive. It's just in what way that's done. It's too easy. I see, so many product lines in some shops. It's like, well, what do you actually believe in? I think this is what I'm trying to get at. You're buying into a koi dealer's culture. It's really, really important, I believe, to align with a good dealer if you can. If you really find one that is good and that you align with them, it gets on. They will enhance your hobby, especially in the early years, tenfold. It will pay dividends massively because it's that guiding force, and if you go in, you've just got to be able to make that initial assessment and get that initial relationship sort of fired up. And let's say you do that by looking around. If you see tanks where fish are unhealthy, it's the first big red flag. Just get out of there. There's no excuse for a dealer to have unhealthy fish in tanks. That's it. And that's on the basic stuff, if you're I say the water looks off. That's that you can see if bad smelling water. I've been to a place back in the early years when we had the shop, a wholesaler, and they was had some fish available that were of interest. We went down, and the first tank I was met with, the water was bright white, and the only way I can describe it is few people will know this smell is when a coral dies after import in a bag. My God, and the system smelled like that. So straight away, my dad was obviously straight onto it. I had enough experience at that point to know something really not right there. Well, what's going on with here? I asked, UV's broke. Bullshit alert. That ain't causing that. And then as we walked around the rest of these facilities, there was dead fish, just looking. If they haven't even paying enough attention throughout a day or a morning or whenever it is to notice a dead fish, it's impossible that can be paying attention to the real small details, so that to me there is all your red flags straight away. It's like, no, how can you trust the advice or whatever it is to be said to come out of the mouth of someone where there's clearly problems and they're just kind of denying any knowledge of it? That those standards stem from the store owners or the management or whoever it is, and you don't need that. You don't want to be learning from that. There's nothing for you to gain. Flip side of it, you walk into a good dealer, you see there's a nice range of fish, they're all healthy, well kept, and the store owner, they need to be approachable. You need to be able to feel comfortable to ask questions because you're going to need to ask questions to learn. And if somebody hasn't got the time for you, or you don't feel like they've got the time for you to give to you, again, walk away, because there's plenty out there that will have. And those people that have will be the ones that will be there. I've just seen koi dealers. I've done it myself. I know you have, and I know plenty of others who have just gone to extreme levels at times to help out customers who they've built a rapport with and have a long-standing relationship with. Shit's hit the fan. They get to know your pond. They get to know what you've done, everything that's gone off. So when you actually need advice, it's easier to unpick and get straight to the point of knowing he's probably done that, it's done that, rather than just coming in cold straight away and trying to reverse engineer, what could have been going on for months and figure it out. You've got that rapport to learn on and share that experience with. I've seen it then where, because of that, dealers start including, customers, certainly long-standing loyal customers in other activities, such as, when they're going out fish buying or have new shipments in, that unbagging. So then that's more opportunity to experience different things in the hobby that you might not get to when you've not got a rapport with a good dealer or somebody to learn from. So you've got all that, but the evidence will be there. If those fish are manky, the water's not in great condition. Even worse, if you see any signs of bacterial disease, that is just an absolute no-go. And that's your basic level of trying to assess them. Like I say, then the person, how do you get on with them? Have they got the time for you? If they're just looking down the nose at you because you're only buying koi at 10 or 15 quid, it's not the place for you. Don't feel like you need to be buying from there because your mate does or something like that, or they're the cool dealer. It's not going to help you out at the point you're at in your hobby. You need somewhere where you're going to be more comfortable and get that care and attention that you need, really. But yeah, I think the biggest thing is, what is the culture of the dealer? Because that's ultimately what you're buying into. You just said it a minute ago. Our culture, certainly mine, is the whole keep it simple. And everything I've done around me in raising fish done, that is my culture. If that's what you're into, that works for you, great, all the information's here. If it's not, then don't. But like I say, at the very least, when I'm preaching it, you can see the evidence behind it. And that I think is massively important.
I think one of the other minefields that you get is, it's certainly in this industry, seems to be the nature of hobbyists to try and get as much information from different sources. And then at that point you get conflicting advice and you try and unravel bits from it. And we've got a fairly active group and a following, which is great, and I like to think that, but you've seen it already where like advice is polar opposite.
Yep.
But if you're seeking advice, how do you sort of guide your way through it? And I think for me, experience is a big word in this whole sort of conversation. Fair enough, having the aesthetics and everything like that's one thing, but actually having been there, done it, worn the t-shirt, that's key. There's things that I know when I started keeping koi and was running the shop when I was younger and was less experienced, I'd hit the panic button, I'd hit the trigger button, and I'd go, right, I need to react to this. I need to do something, because if I'm not doing it, I'm not being pragmatic or positive with the situation. Whereas now it's just like, very rarely do I ever sort of go, shit, slow it down, assess the situation. Most of the advice I give out to people, don't stress. I know that's quite in me as a character, but like it's almost as if like you need this knee-jerk reaction to validate that you've done something positive. But sometimes that experience, it's like having that sort of old man's mentality sort of thing where, just assess the situation, deal with the facts, find a solution. But I think people jump in too early.
That only comes with experience.
Yeah.
I'm just sat reliving all that in my head as you've said it. I mean, my God, the amount of times I've made things 10 times worse by rushing in, especially with fish, because when you do something, it takes time for the results to unravel.
You get this lagging effect, don't you?
Yeah, and it's hard work. But I think the big thing is, don't be afraid to ask questions. Ultimately, you as the buyer, the consumer, whatever you want to say is, you're going to a dealer. They want your money. And that's not the kit, but in a nutshell, they want you to transact with them. Let's say it that way. That sounds a bit less harsh. And yeah, don't be afraid to ask the questions, especially if your mentality is, look, I'm looking to build a rapport with someone. That's not to say you've got to stay loyal there, because ultimately the onus is then on the dealer to keep the hobby interesting for you. If that's what they're looking to do, is if you for them to keep your attention and engagement. So it's not necessarily that, but it's like, what are you getting from them? And don't be afraid to ask, what's your quarantine policy? Where do your fish come from? What's your CV? What experience have you got? How long have you been doing this? I see people preaching and stuff about Japan who's never been. You don't need to go to Japan to be a good koi dealer. That's not what I'm saying here.
Yeah.
But how can you sit talking about Japan and what goes off in Japan when you've never been? Even to the point where I see people who's been once or been twice preaching about what goes off. Yeah, they know a bit more than somebody who hasn't been in that respect, but they still don't really know what's going off. It took me 22 years to fully, and there's a few bits probably I need to unpick, but this is getting into some of the dark secrets, so to speak. But yeah, this is what I'm trying to get at. It's just, be diligent and ask the questions and find out, because you can't. How can somebody preach about a Nexus filter if they've never used one? This is what I'm getting at. Why would you want to buy a Nexus from somebody who's never used one or never fitted one? Point that I don't see where there's any added value to that, when there's people out there who will charge the same price. There'll be aftercare when you've bought that from them, and all of a sudden something goes wrong. You can pick the phone up and they'll be able to tell you X, Y, and Z, or this potential problem. How do you know that's going to come from somebody who hasn't? They probably don't know, and then they might just say, "Oh, you need to phone EA for that technical advice." There's nothing personalised there. There's no added value. There's no point in using that dealer. You might as well just shop online for the cheapest price, because there's nothing else to be gained from it.
I think therein lies a bit of the problem. Massively. I think the amount of times, one of the things that a lot of people say to me, like, "Oh, Chris, I'm after Sankey, Kahaka, or whatever." Yeah, no problem. But it's a bit of a difficult way of wording it, but what's your budget? What's your price range? Are we talking, like, do you want me to be bowling 80 centimetre sort of telephone number koi, or do you want, give me an idea? No one wants to show their card, but I actually think having a bit of honesty with the dealer is I don't want to go over X amount. Okay, well, let's work within those realms, rather than going, you need one of these, you need one of these, you need one of these. I think people need to be a bit more realistic and open, but you don't do that unless you've got that rapport with someone.
Yeah, exactly. You need a bit of trust there.
So when you're going in cold,
yeah,
it is a tricky one to figure out.
Yeah, because that is the best way for that kind of scenario, as you've just said, to sort of play out. But I think there's elements from both sides of it. So you need that trust, because the issue as well is you want a dealer to be. Sometimes they won't approach it from the angle and telling it how it is. Like I would, I've heard it too many times over the years, to the point where, you say, I've got $3,000 to spend on a fish. They're often the ones that I will, when somebody's approached me with that, a dealer, I say I'm not interested straight away, because I know how that plays out, and that's often one of these impossible lists as well. And you've got to be strong enough then as a seller to actually go back and just say, because that's a potentially really nice sale for somebody, but you've got to go back and say, well, what are you looking for? Oh, I want a Kohaku from Sakai, 2 years old, 55 centimetre-ish, female, nice pattern. Yeah, for $3,000, not happening. End of. Rather than go and waste a load of people's time in the whole kind of chain of things as well. So it's a really, real tough, and that's with the products as well. Like I say, if you walk into a shop and there's only a metre of shelving and it's got like 4 products on, what's your impression going to be?
Yeah.
Whereas I'd stay there and say, well, this is the stuff I kind of believe in, and that is tough then, because there's not much of a business to be built unless you can corner the market for them.
I think you're best off sticking to koi, mate. Let's put it that way.
To them, with them, that handful of products, and then you enter into a world of, you've got to make your shop look nice and interesting and all the rest of it, but then you're overwhelmed with choice. I just find the whole thing, it's tough, isn't it?
I think one thing that I see quite a lot, and I've been on the trading side of the business, the retail, pretty much every aspect of the industry. There's not a lot I've not been involved in. People are really, really that they will not back down if they don't know something. If someone asks me something that I don't know, you stumped me there. Yeah, good question. I'll find out. But a lot of people are so strong-minded that they cut, and you hear these words coming out of their mouth, and it's before you know it, it becomes advice, and that advice is taken home, carried out, and yeah, I mean you're laughing, but it happens all the time.
I'm laughing because you've just reminded me of not forgetting. I served quite a long time in retail, albeit as a child, really, but I did love it and learned a lot from it, especially in dealing with people. I think what I found nice, and that's gone off story, was that my dad's aquatic shop dealt with such a diverse range of people, from a lot who would have kept a goldfish in a bowl, their very first fish, a tropical fish, goldfish, whatever it was. And I always found it nice. My mentality was to nurture those people and try and build a longer term loyal customer base rather than having a high turnover people that you've pissed off and let go. So there's just another thing you can look for if you try and find out if people got that mentality, because that's when I would go, overextending all the time to try and help people, to help them progress in the hobby, in the hope that, long term they would be a loyal customer to the business. But the story that got me laughing, I remember this bloke. So although at that point I'm quite young, learning a lot of technical information, which you won't quite believe because I'd never, yeah, bores me to tears these days, but it's all in there, mate, somewhere.
Oh yeah, yeah.
And so I would never naturally default to talking to anybody on a technical level. Just pretty much how I am now, just default to, plain English where possible. And I'll never forget Mr. NO2, I used to call him. He was just obsessed with trying to, he obviously learnt, the chemical symbols for the waters. So it was all this NO2. And I remember just trying to, like I say, got a bit of knowledge from somewhere and trying to talk down, and I made a special effort to boggle his brain every time he come in with technical nothingness. But yeah, you're right. That's a little bit of information can be dangerous sometimes, can't it?
Well, it's also when you start going down, my opinion, the wrong avenue. We've said it before about certain, not groups per se, but certain followings, and for example, the people that are chasing really low levels of nitrate, for example. Let's just use that as one sort of mindset. That's the way you've got to keep koi. Whereas it's never really entered my mindset.
So then again, my direct response to that when you hear that, albeit from a hobbyist or a dealer, is, where's your evidence? That's part of your koi keeping remit, your experience, your thing. Where is your evidence to support that keeping a really low nitrite level does X, Y, and Z, rather than just something you've heard and passed on? That's the bit I'm trying to get across with all this. It's easy just to say stuff with actually having no experience or substance behind it, and people just passing that information on aren't really the ones you want to be listening to, because nobody in that chain is going to ever truly understand what's going on. And there are guys out there, I think the ones that try and blanket everything, it's probably the hardest. There's a few I see, and it's not saying there's any wrongs. I'm going to mention a guy here, actually, to be fair, because I've got a lot of respect for him. Dave at Coastal Koi.
Yep.
Dave's a great guy, and I love the fact, watching that, he's been strong enough over the years to stand by male fish, as I've done, as you've done, and trying to promote them for what they truly are. He's into ozone, from what I can gather. He works with a few select breeders where he's really built that rapport with them and got it all going on. From the outside in looking at it, I think that's great. He stands by his values, his experience, where his skill sets and specialisms lie. That's fantastic. So people know what they're getting when they're dealing with somebody like that. They know what to expect. He's consistent with it. The messaging's consistent, and that's his beliefs. If you go into that shop and you like what you see, that's something you can buy into. Happy days. That's what I'm kind of pro and for on that side of things. It's people who actually kind of practice what they preach and stand by it a little bit. They're the guys, you know, you can really kind of get behind and trust what they're saying in this job. And there's plenty of them out there. Take away the styles and what it delivers and all the rest of it, is do they practice what they preach? You know, are they selling the stuff that they're actively trying to sell to you? Are they using it? Have they got experience with it? Just everything along them lines, you know, do they actually understand the breeders, you know, anything about the breeders' fish who they're selling? You know, especially as you climb up the ladder and the more you start spending on a fish, I'd expect that to be the bare minimum, just like I did when I went to buy my amplifiers and subwoofers and speakers. You know, these guys know the ins and outs of every one of them products to make sure they got the right fit for me before I handed my cash over.
I think if we sort of hone in on koi side of things, which we always do, we've sort of spoken about dry goods a little bit. It is very easy for a hobbyist to get hoodwinked into be falling into the pattern trap. This fish is good because of it's got a nice maritime spot on the head. We see it time and time again. And ironically, sometimes the good fish are overlooked because the easy sale is the one that, yeah, has got the nice shiny pattern and the step pattern. But is that the dealer's fault, or is that a conscious sort of mindset that British hobbyists have got, where they just sort of are too pattern orientated?
That again, my argument to that would be drawing back to my time in it and how I would be with people. Was I agree with you, you know, there's always that thing of, I want that one. And I would always, every time, whether they wanted to hear it or not, go, have you considered this one? Because in every tank, we've got a batch of fish, we need to sell them. That's the cold, hard facts of that either way. And there are always them ones that stand out. But just knowing the koi keeper, and this is again where the whole rapport thing comes in. There'd be certain individuals, I knew what they were looking to achieve or like raise it or grow it, whatever it is. Have you considered this one? And there's two just sprung to mind straight away. A Sakazumi show I once sold that was 18 quid. I remember it. And even after I packed up retailing, and this was a guy this guy didn't like the fish at the time. He'd picked a different one. Gone, have you considered this? Here's why. Took that fit. He took the one in the end. I think he took the one that he picked as well. And the one that I recommended, still, I think 12 years on, it must have been. I'd been well out the shop and all the rest of it. Actually, randomly, I was in the area he was in one day, and I called him up and just, you know, how's things? He says, you never guess what? That show that I want to buy at 18 quid is still going. It's absolutely incredible fish, how it transformed. They've never done it. And that was from an 18 quid fish. And then there was another one that actually made it onto the cover of Koi magazine one day. Sakazumi, believe it or not, again. The 40 pounder it was nicknamed. I guess you go where that's heading.
Yeah, I think you showed me before.
Kowaku in a batch, 40 quid. And I just remember him coming in. I says, hey, you need to have a look at this. I went, oh, yeah, that's nice. I said, trust me, that's a fish, that is. And yeah, sure enough, this was a guy again. Because of the rapport, I knew he could raise it really well because of what I'd been teaching him, and he was basically an extension of all my beliefs. He'd put everything into practice. It was doing really well. Raised this fish up to mid-60s. Absolutely stonking piece that, again, made it onto the cover in the end. Just crazy stuff.
It's one of the big sort of...
But sorry, just think you've got to be strong enough. It's again, it's on the onus of the dealer to build their credibility for you to trust them, and then your side also extending some trust, having done that initial assessment, and that's where you can start winning, as opposed to going through without that aid over time, where, you know, in the end you're buying fish and you're up in the mark, you're spending 300, 400, 500 fish, and you're not getting anywhere because you're potentially picking all the wrong stuff all the time, rather than having that trusting relationship to lean on with someone who you know that's their skill set, it's what they do, where you can potentially grab that bargain, that 40 quid that becomes a fish that was at that time easily worth 2-3 grand.
Yeah, I mean, they're there, aren't they? I mean, we see it in batches of Tosai all the time, sort of bringing it back to knowledge and experience. The fish are there. It's obviously what you can do with them as well. I mean, time and time again, I remember seeing like batches of, you know, console Tosai coming in. Just look at me, it happens all the time. You just go, what has the breeder not seen in that.
Mm.
At times it's just,
Yeah.
you just scratch your head. But as that dealer then got the foresight and the vision to go, this is something worthwhile.
Yeah, if you haven't, that's the point.
Yeah.
If you have, then happy days with opportunities like that. But there's loads to it. This is why I find it really, really tough. But I think that's the big thing is, just assess what it is you're actually buying into and what stands behind it all. You need to go and make your assessments, and this is just that there's loads of, it extends beyond koi, doesn't it? There's every industry has the same problems here. I mean, car dealers, wow, it's just, my God, scare the life out of me, because they're just branded as crooks in general, aren't they? Until you eventually find someone you feel like you can trust, and you're getting the right stuff out of them. But I always tend to find that I do my research a lot, and I'll go in and actually quiz stuff already knowing the answers, which is quite useful, because then you actually see what somebody's made of behind it. And we've had it with companies, haven't we? I would say this about Awaza, actually, because I've been community liaising with them quite a lot recently over some pumps and bits and bobs. The main sales guy, or the main manager in England now, I've known since I was about 11, 12, I think. He used to be my sales rep. Always stood out like a sore thumb compared to any other sales rep I dealt with. His product knowledge, didn't need the catalogue, could almost tell you what was on any given page of that catalogue, recall anything about any product off the top of his head, because he knew his shit inside out. That's something you can get behind and trust. That's someone who knows their stuff, does the legwork. That culture still now, even the new rep I've just started working with, like, holy shit, they're like clones of each other.
That is ingrained in that.
Yeah.
Company.
But straight away here, that is something I can get behind. Again, I'm just analysing that as a brand, because then if we look at drum filters, one of my favourite topics of conversation, my big thing here is, right, how the hell do I analyse right now what is the best drum filter to buy? I've got, other than listening to other people who's selling them, this is where the battle comes. How do I know what to trust? That falls back to me analysing brand realistically. I'm going to spend £3,000-4,000 on a drum filter. It's a huge financial investment. What happens if it goes wrong? This is where I'm going to straight away. Yeah. What happens if it goes wrong? I want 10 years worth of running out that bit of kit for the money I'm about to spend. So what happens if this little spare part goes wrong after 6 years? Okay. Are any of the companies that are out there manufacturing drums even going to be around in 6 years? Because let's face it, some of them, a couple of brands out there, still look like they're being made in a garden shed. So can't rely on that. The drums I have, every time I need a spare part, a different part comes. Sensors things changing all the time, which tells me something.
Yeah.
So how the fuck do I keep up with all this? It's bonkers. So then how I've analysed that straight away is, right, Awaza. I know Awaza do all their own product development and research. For one, there's some credibility for you. They've got those people in-house. So how I break it down. They've got that experience and knowledge of decades now of development themselves, of making the right equipment. They quote all the factual figures in regards to wattage and head height and all that kind of stuff. It's all in there. Spare parts, we know they carry every spare part for every product for as long. Oh, they just go back and back and back. They've got everything.
Yeah, the spares catalog
straight there. The company's already decades old, but it's all there to get like that. And then you obviously have the reps and everybody around them, that in-depth knowledge and understanding they all have. This is a company that cares. This is a company that gives a shit about every little bit of that process. I'm not saying others out there don't right now, but for me, I've got to make a snap decision here. I'm staring at all these products, and I know that's what sits behind that Awaza one, as well as it being a unique product, all the things they've thought about, the removable screens and developing that. Boom, that's the one for me. Without going any further, that's the one I'm putting my money on.
I agree with you. I've been a massive Awaza advocate for years. I have. But I think with that comes a different price point. And given that a lot of people are quite price orientated these days, it leads people down a path that perhaps they're chasing price point rather than
And then
product.
this is where, so I hope from that bit, me just saying that, you can see how I'm analysing things to try and make that right decision. Just as any of you guys listening to this will be in that same scenario. So that's the decision I come to, that's the one to really go for. My God, that's way out of my budget. So then and a good dealer at this point should be going, right, is a drum really the right thing for you? This is what I'm getting at, not, right, okay, take that brand that's 500 quid cheaper because you just get that in on budget, or it's a grand cheaper.
Yeah.
At that point, I'm going, a drum's possibly not the right thing for you. Here's some alternative ways
Yeah, sure.
you can possibly look at this and doing it. So hopefully as this unfolds, you can see what I think the expectations are from you of making sure you get it right for you based on where you're at in your hobby.
If we tie it back to koi again, it's like the classic, I'll buy an inferior fish because it's female.
Yep.
But for me, you and I, the logic behind that is nuts.
Yeah.
But it's the same kind of thing. Like, you're absolutely right, particularly with drum filters. These are technical moving pieces of equipment. Don't really want to be shying on
It
these.
can be hard. It's like the whole thing with the food. I'm not going to get into this too much because it always seems to be a big one. But yeah, it's like, where do you go? We know sake curry is the best. I won't have it argued or done. It is. But then where do you go if that doesn't fit on budget? But then again, I believe the onus on a good dealer who understands their products will say the same as what we have, even though I'm not selling it to anybody. It's like, just look at the bigger picture here, rather than just send you off on your bag of food that's £10 cheaper for the same weight. It's like, well, what about, looking at conversion ratios? Because for every, 100 grams of that you're feeding, your fish are gaining more weight doing that, which instantly changes the price dynamic. Have you considered all the other intangibles and things like that? It's just so much, but that's what I'm looking for from a seller. I mean, is that understanding of what they're selling, and not just selling it because markup's good on X, Y, and Z brand compared to Oaza. That's the best, but I make more money on this. That's the stuff that really rattles me.
I think it takes a bit of a visionary though, mate. Like, your average business in most walks of life, they are quite XYZ kind of characters. I think the impression that there's a lot of knowledgeable people in the UK for the koi hobby is, when you dig a bit deeper. You remember Clive, my old boss, passed away now, but a real character in every sense. I remember when I was having a bit of a confidence crisis when I was a bit young, and I was like, I sometimes feel like, because I took over like running the business from quite a young age, I sometimes feel like I'm talking to people and I haven't got the knowledge. And he just sort of looked at me and said, to be an expert, you only need to know one word more than the person you're speaking to. And that's kind of the impression I get sometimes when I overhear people and I listen to advice and things like that. And it's a dangerous path.
Yeah, it is. That's that pretty much, sums a lot of it up. But this is not a bashing thing. There is loads of great dealers out there. What I'm really saying is, for people to switch on that common sense awareness and just dig a bit deeper into the people they are dealing with before making them decisions. Because I do believe in the culture of find a good dealer and kind of stick with them. Not necessarily just one, but one or two. But it's very careful, because you say you're going to learn koi keeping on that basis from them. And that's why I'm stressing this. It's then so important to do your homework, because you might not get where you want as a koi keeper based on the people who are mentoring you in a lot of ways. There's a lot to be had from it, but that's what I'm saying. Just do a bit of due diligence and see what's actually sat behind these people. So like I said, and the big one is, you walk in and fish are falling apart and everything looks crap. It's not even worth entering any more of a conversation, is it?
No. I think hopefully there's a bit of advice in there that people can take on board, and no doubt we usually get a bit of feedback from people that sort of go, oh yeah, you kind of touched on a nerve there, or but I was having the same issue, sort of thing. So yeah, hopefully there's a bit of advice. I'm
hoping it's not just been waffle, and obviously it's kind of made some sense, because it was quite an odd one to approach, to be fair. But there's loads and loads of different angles, you know, you look at it from, and you can't be having animal welfare again.
Yeah.
You look at that kind of things, the basics. You've not got to want to get into koi keeper, but if there is a specific angle you want to get into, you need to go to the person who is seen to be, you know, that to be a part of their koi keeping culture. It's the same as breeders and bloodlines and all the rest of it. And even breeders, you know, I look back at and think I make these assessments when I'm about to start dealing with a breeder, especially if it's a new one. You got to pay attention to it. I'm looking at right now from a biosecurity perspective, but even analyze, because I can't do business with every breeder. I've kind of tried spreading myself that thin in the past, and it doesn't help you get anywhere really. So now it's like, who do I really want to focus on? So when it's come to a new farm, it's like, right, who is this guy? Are they following guidelines? Are they getting tested? Is there any history? Where the parent fish come from? We get to a couple of breeders now who we're aware of obviously had KHV problems a few times on the bounce. What do you do in that? Straight away there, my culture is absolutely not, no more, because they clearly don't have an understanding of why that keeps happening. Once, forgivable. Twice, unfortunate. 3 times, no, I'm sorry, it's just a ticking time bomb.
Yeah.
So
agreed.
why am I going to risk everything I've got on bringing KHV into my fish houses for somebody who clearly doesn't know what keeps happening? Yet so many other people out there I see have just jumped straight back on it.
Well, yeah, and obviously to the uneducated, you know better off, are you? You got no idea of the scenario and the risks
So
associated.
I look at that, and that's what I mean about you doing your due diligence there on what's going on. You know, how does your dealer analyse who to buy fish off? I know that's the case. I'm going nowhere near that. I know there's other breeders in the past where there could be a potential risk because they're breeding, but they're also bringing fish in from this, and they've been known to be a bit of a bacterial hotspot. Again, stay away from it. That's pulling all that information in, then going making my own assessment of what's going on. Sometimes also you just dip your toe in because you can't just go off a hearsay. You think, right, I try that, and then you realise, yeah, that weren't great. Leave that alone for another time. It's all this information that's just so key on making these decisions. It's not just as straightforward as believing the stuff that comes out of somebody's mouth.
Interesting stuff, mate. And yeah, something I know we're both fairly passionate about. We want people to be enjoying the hobby to the best ability that they can. So yeah, hopefully there's been some info within this session that's been of use to everyone. So, but for now, we'll say cheerio, and yeah, we'll see you on the next one.
Catch you soon, guys.